Can you please tell me your name and your current position?
Sure. My name is Vanessa Payne. I am the People and Culture Manager for the APAC region at Vend.
Can you give us an overview of your career to date so far?
So I worked in the recruitment space for about 4 years almost, and I primarily focused on tech recruitment. So recruiting software engineers and testers and analysts specifically for the tech space. Then I moved on to where I am now at Vend, which is we're a high growth tech startup based in Auckland. Originally I started in a recruitment role there, again specialising in growing our software engineering team. About a year into that role, I moved into a more generalist HR role, which is the role that I've been doing for a couple of years now.
So what does your job involve on a day-to-day basis?
So I could be working on growth and development plans with our employees, helping them grow or get that next role, onboarding new employees, having coaching conversations with managers, maybe helping them have better one-on-ones with their team, working on any sort of operational side of a new business initiative. Every decision that's made at Vend has an impact on our people, because our people are the ones that are going to be executing on those things, and so it's really important that we keep our people front of mind when we're talking about any new business initiatives. So I love to be involved in those sorts of conversations.
So what's changed in the IT industry from when you first started?
Wow, what has changed? I would say a lot has changed in the IT industry. When I first started, I would say that there were definitely lots of different types of employers, but over the past 7 years, what I think I've seen is a real explosion of growth in the startup sector. So even when I started at Vend, which is 3 years ago, working for a startup was quite new, I think, and quite almost a little bit unheard of, because I'm not sure, aside from Xero, were there lots of other cloud-based startups around Auckland. Now, there are so many startups, and it's really growing, and the startup industry has become a lot more diverse. And so I think as a candidate, if you're wanting to work for a startup, there will be multiple options out there for you if that's an avenue you'd like to take in your career.
So what would be your advice for people who are looking to enter into the IT space?
I think it's really important that you need to pick your lane. What area are you particularly passionate about, and why are you passionate about that, and how can you excel in that area? One particular interview that really sticks out in my mind is we interviewed probably about just over a year ago for a junior engineer role. Not a role that we would interview for a lot. We don't often have requirements for junior engineers, but this role would suit somebody junior because it needed to interface between multiple departments and have really strong communication skills over really deep technical skills. So that's why we were looking for somebody junior. And the person who was successful in the role really blew us away in the interview, and I would say he blew us away because he asked us and listened to really what we were looking for in the role, and he could pick up really quickly that what we were looking for was strong communication skills and almost just empathy. And so what he did in the interview process was really quite remarkable, as he really demonstrated his high level of emotional intelligence and his communication skills. And so when it came down to making a choice as to who the best person for the role was, he was a standout choice, and he's done really well in that role and has actually stepped into another role in the organisation now.
For job seekers, can you please elaborate on emotional intelligence and how do you actually assess it in a job interview process?
Emotional intelligence for me, I think, is somebody's ability to be able to read a room or to read the emotions of the person that they are speaking to. How I would measure that, I think, in a recruitment scenario, is I would probably ask the candidate to describe situations where they've felt under stress, or they've been in a sort of a tense or or a demanding project or a tense meeting or something like that, and how they responded to that. And whether someone can even describe that situation at all. Oftentimes people will say, oh, I'm not sure I've ever been in a project like that. Chances are they will have, and if they have a high level of emotional intelligence, they'll be able to talk to the emotions that went on there and how they adapted to it.
So what do you expect to be the most in-demand roles in the next couple of years?
I would say something that's really growing for us is our product design team, so the UX or the UI designers that specifically work on our product and how our product looks and feels. And then beyond that, they have an influence over the journey that our customers take through our app, and I think that holistic view of design, specifically in the product sense, is going to become more and more important, and those skills are going to become more and more in demand. Because while we have a lot of product development companies in New Zealand, we don't necessarily have a lot of people who have gone through that product design cycle and have experience with that. So I really see that for us as an area of growth that we're going to see, and we're going to keep hiring into that team. We're always going to continue to hire software engineers. I don't know if that will ever go away, and that will probably always continue. But again, what we see is it's less about the technical capability and more about how curious the candidate is, how flexible can they be, can they adapt to our ever-changing environment. We work in such a fast-paced business, working in SaaS, and so the requirements change, or the directive from our CEO might change, and so the person really needs to be really adaptive and resilient. So I think some of the softer skills will become more in demand than perhaps the technical skills will be.
So what can job seekers do to stand out in the crowd?
Thinking back to the junior engineer candidate that I mentioned, he really stood out from the crowd because he took the time to really understand what we were looking for and what sort of the key skills required for the role beyond just what programming language he would need to know. It always really stands out for me when somebody takes the time to really ask me those questions, ask me about the culture of our organisation, specifically from my perspective, as opposed to just telling me all about themselves. Obviously that's super important and I want to hear all about them, but if somebody's able to tailor their communication so they can present themselves in the best possible way based on what we're looking for, then I think that makes a really huge difference.
So what advice would you give to a candidate who's preparing to have a phone or a video interview?
It can be quite tough to come across in the best possible way over the phone or over sort of a video call with a recruiter or a hiring manager, because you almost have to exaggerate everything that you do because you're not face to face, right? The person can't pick up the subtle cues that you're giving off, or over the phone they might not necessarily be able to hear you nodding your head as they're speaking because they can't see you. So the best advice that I would give would probably be to, especially over the phone, to smile, because you can always tell in somebody's voice when they're smiling. And also over a video call is almost trying to exaggerate sort of those little subtle movements that you might be able to pick up in person but you're not going to be able to pick up over a video call. It can be a little bit awkward sometimes, I think, interviewing, using technology, because the video might be slightly delayed, or you might start talking and then the person might start talking, so you just both like and that can be a little bit awkward, and so I think it's important to be ready for those situations and to kind of be able to roll with the technology punches and be able to laugh off any sort of bad connections that you might be having. But I think it's super important as well to really listen to what the hiring manager or the recruiter is saying. And if you're not sure that you've perhaps given the right answer, or you're not sure you've given them the information that they're looking for, I would always ask like a clarifying question at the end of my answer. So talk about your experience. Is that the type of information that you were looking for, or did they give you what you needed there? Just to make sure that nothing is getting lost in translation over the phone or over a video.
Hey, thank you so much for coming to join us today. It's been great to learn a little bit about Vend and yourself.
My pleasure, thank you for having me.